did it. This guy, he did it. So you might be wondering why we're wearing the same clothes. It's laundry day here in Chicago.
Super greasy.
Yeah, super
24/7. So
in this episode of Nerf Mercs, we wanted to talk about something that both Gears and I are into, which is traveling to Nerf and meeting other Nerfers. Nerf exists in its strongest point on the field and in the internet. Mm-hmm. And so often there are these sort of people who you just have no idea who they actually are that you talk to all the time, you know? It feels like very early 90s old school internet, the way the community is so small and entangled.
It really is. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's my absolute favorite part about the Nerf community these days. There's so many awesome little pockets of players scattered all across the United States. And I mean, most of them are within, traveling distance away from one another. I mean, everything from traveling to HVZ events to traveling with Wings to one of the Recon Wars in Toledo a few months ago. There's so many opportunities to go out and see these, other groups of Nerfers. By far my favorite part of the community. So much fun.
Yeah, I've always found that other Nerfers, I mean, we're a pretty small community, and we're all kind of weird. We're like, most of the adults, kind of weird, playing with toys, kind of weird.
Kind of weird.
But we're also all, like, super welcoming. I've been in, like, some other communities, like tabletop gaming communities and whatnot, that are just, like, a little wary and a little weird and stuff, just because, like, the activity is physical. We're out there and we're running and we're sweating and we're having a good time with each other. Whereas, in other activities, you might just be, like, sitting down or just, like, discussing gear or whatever. It's not like that at all.
So that was kind of my thing, man. When I started nerfing in, late 2007, that was kind of my first, big jump into any hobby. I casually played Dungeons and Dragons with my friends. Any sort of nerdy hobby or nerdy fad, I guess you could say, that might have been fleeting, in any, high school or middle school, I kind of had an interest in. Mm-hmm. But once I kind of took off in my sophomore year of high school and started getting into nerfing, that was such like a threshold to cross, especially with my parents. That was probably the hardest thing to wrap around their heads. I'm doing this thing on the internet where I have to borrow your car and go out and meet these strangers I've never met before, but they're totally cool, I promise. Mm-hmm. It's such a physical hobby where we're not just communicating online. There's a level of merit in meeting each other face to face, and there's also a level of competitive merit on the field that makes it super enticing. So it's definitely a hobby where you have to meet face to face. Doesn't really make you know what I'm kind of saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this podcast came out of a Nerf trip, essentially. You had talked about wanting to do like sort of journalizing when you go to other things, and I just wasn't super into it at the time. I thought it was a good idea. I didn't know how to help or whatever. And then we went to NVZ, and there were a lot of people who were super dedicated, and people who I had met going to Penn State HVZ with you. And met these people who were like really, really into it, and were traveling, and met like some of the other YouTube Nerfers and stuff. And I was able to really tie it all together and realize that there is this sort of entire conversation going on that I really wanted to be a part of.
And that's the thing too. Every time I travel to these, I mean you and I both, when we travel to other games, we'll see Nerfers who just do not participate in some form of like online participation. Especially with HVZ in particular. Yeah. Whenever we travel to Penn State, NVZ,
there's such little crossover.
There's very little crossover, especially with casual players who participate in their college games, but they might not even be aware that there's an online following for these games. My initial goal was to start a type of blog about individual players who might not have that receptibility of like understanding that there are online forums for these guys to to post their stuff on, because you see the absolute weirdest stuff
Mm-hmm.
at these college HVZ games.
Mm-hmm.
College players who aren't entirely familiar with what may already exist for Nerf,
Mm-hmm.
and they're already finding solutions to their shortcomings. It's so awesome. So that was my initial goal, was to start a some sort of blog or some sort of almost like a Tumblr kind of just like a minimalistic blog approach. Just a player, their picture, what they have, and where they're from. That's all I want to do. But it's so overwhelming because especially now that we've been traveling more and more every month, it's kind of difficult to keep up on everything. Just given the frequency that we're meeting all these new players.
Right, and that was something that Fujio was talking. Was a mutual friend of ours.
Champ in the making.
Champ in the making. He brought. I mean, he lives a Nerf lifestyle, right? And he played the game for a while, and then decided that he was just going to document the rest of it. And then, like, since then, we've talked to him a little bit about just how much stuff he didn't capture. Just how much really cool, really eccentric, weird stuff, like the socks people were bringing were real cool. And just all the stuff that he just couldn't capture. And there's just so much out there to see. Every one of you should travel to these things. Go meet Nerfers.
That's my big thing, man. If you have the ability to travel to any local games, absolutely do it. There's such a huge world of Nerfers, like, outside of your own community bubble. It's so enlightening. It's so refreshing. It's so it's both physically and emotionally rewarding to kind of see that this hobby is so much bigger than what anyone can imagine. Every time I travel to a school I've never played at before, or even schools I have played at in the past and I might have skipped, an invitational or two, and I revisit, it's amazing to see. It's really truly cool to see, how these players evolve, and it's almost really interesting too, because you can kind of pick out certain individuals and say, oh, X, Y, and Z, they did this last year, now they're doing this year. It's really cool, and just socializing. It's so awesome. Getting to meet these players you would otherwise never meet, especially online.
Yeah, new players who maybe you are familiar with online or whatever, and new game types. Yeah. So like recently, I went to the war in Indianapolis, and Ari, he goes by Zambona.
He's not Boomtendo?
Not Boomtendo. The non-vegan Boomco guy.
Okay.
The non-vegan Boomco
guy. Got it. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm vegan too, but I'm not the Boomco guy. It gets confusing. We can just rub this all out. Anyway, so he's into the Lord of the Rings and wanted to do a Lord of the Rings game type. So
typical
we played
vegan stuff.
Yeah, right. So we played the Siege at Helm's Deep game type that he just came up with, and it was great. And we played through a couple of rounds. They played a few before we got there, and they're just working it out, And you did the same thing with your pizza game.
Oh yeah,
yeah. When we had built a big cardboard castle and tried to deliver pizzas, it was great. And that's the kind of sort of creativity that happens in the moment in that spot that you don't get in your own little insular community.
Right on.
And you had a similar experience. You just went back to APOC.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's different for you being here nerfing, which we only do super stock here in Chicago, and then going out there and having an entirely different game type that you're familiar with. But I'm sure it's different every time.
Oh no, it's absolutely different every time. And my big thing with APOC this year was this was my 8th APOC, and it was just as fun as any other. But it's this year I noticed a more fresh blood than I noticed at any APOC before. And typically when I go to, any kind of, large scale NIC event, whether it be APOC or Armageddon, I kind of sit back and, let the organizers go over the rules and stuff. But I notice every single time, even last year, there's more players sticking around. Hey, how do I play Gunslinger Heaven? Hey, how do I play Carpe? Hey, how do I play Defend the Core?
Game types that you aren't even playing.
Stuff that I'm super familiar with already, but I'm seeing more players stick around to hear the role types because there's more new players who are coming out to experience it. Yeah, so it's really cool. But in terms of I guess game types at APOC, everything that we play is pretty familiar. We kind of want to make APOC the best event possible for anyone who's relatively new to the hobby. So most of the stuff we play is pretty standard. But, we do like to have, groups branch off and try weird stuff off in the corner somewhere. Absolutely. So that's the thing.
You want to talk about upcoming chances to travel if you're in the Midwest?
considering that September will be beginning the fall 2016
Yeah,
semester for
yeah.
a lot of college students,
School's
also
back
means
in.
school is back in town. We will also be attending some early semester HVC invitationals. September 10th, we will be attending, I believe it's per Ball State. We will
Ball
be
State.
attending Ball State's fall 2016 HVZ Invitational. Should be a pretty good time. I've attended Ball State a couple times in the past, and each time the Invitational is more ridiculous.
It's a goofy game,
than
yeah.
the last. Very goofy. I mean, we've both played games that are relatively angry in tone, but Ball State is a totally different ball game. No pun intended. It's just a really goofy, really fun, and long HVZ event. Yeah, and it
Sounds awesome.
It's got the admin team is a super great group of guys. Cannot recommend them enough. And then the following week on September 17th, we'll be heading to Purdue.
Purdue. Don't.
Or don't show up.
You know, whichever.
Yeah. So Purdue is actually the Boiler League of Tag. I believe is the name of their Nerf community. Never actually played there before.
Yeah.
No, never played. I've been to. I know that there were groups of Penn Staters. You know, when I was still a student, who would travel out to their games. Never had the opportunity, but oh, God, I am super pumped. Considering the fact that both these invitationals are less than an hour and a half, 2 hours from us.
Super
if
close.
you were absolutely from the Indiana area, check these games out.
If you're
from the general Midwest.
Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky,
I would go as far as Wisconsin.
Missouri, Wisconsin. Yeah, we've definitely got some regulars that come with us. From Wisconsin.
I've told you in the past.
Talking to you, Wings and Jonah.
It's for Wings. Especially Ball State, man. They threw the most absolute ridiculous game of HVZ I've ever played 2 years ago at their, I believe it was their fall 2015 Invitational.
Okay.
Highly recommend it. Check it out. We will be there. Come and say hi to us.
Peace.